Who would have thought that Peugeot would offer one of the most comprehensive small car ranges in Australia in 2023? That is a fact. This is the 308. I'm going to tell you all about it in this review. G'day, I'm Matt. This channel is called The Right Car, where I help you find the right car for your needs. Is this going to be it? Well, the Peugeot 308 does come with a bunch of different options available. This one here is the top-spec, newly added plug-in hybrid hatchback. There's also a non-hybrid hatch and a non-hybrid wagon. So it's a comprehensive lineup, and I'm going to tell you all about it in this review. The Peugeot 308 range is expensive. I've said it, it's a fact. This one here is just under $65,000, which is in a similar price point to the Volkswagen Golf R, and it's a performance hatch and you're not getting anywhere near as much performance from this car. So that might be something you want to consider. But you are getting a bunch of standard equipment, including matrix LED lights, 18-inch alloy wheels, a panoramic sunroof, twin 10-inch screens. There's also heated and massaging front seats, and the driver's seat is electrically adjustable, and there's a lovely trim on the inside too. And all of that you can get for $16,000 less if you buy the top-spec non-plug-in hybrid. And the plug-in hybrid is $21,000 more than the entry-level petrol hatchback, which I think comes pretty well equipped as it is. If you want the wagon, it's going to cost you just over $50,000 before on-road costs, and it comes very handsomely equipped too. It's the pick for me. If you want a hatchback, you want it to be European and you want it to have plug-in hybrid technology, there are a couple of other options for you, including the Cupra Leon. Now, it's a sporty Spanish little hatchback, and I reckon it looks fantastic. It's a bit more affordable than the Peugeot 308 when it comes to plug-in hybrid versions, and there's an extensive range available for it too, including a performance model with all-wheel drive, which you can't get in a 308. It's definitely worth a look. Let me know if you like it. The other contender is the Mercedes A-Class. Prices for it are a bit higher, as you probably expect, but there is a plug-in hybrid version, and you can also get it with all-wheel drive if you want it. There's performance-oriented versions. There's also an A-Class sedan, which you can't get if you're choosing a 308. So that might be another contender for you. Another option you should probably be checking out is the Toyota Corolla Hybrid. I know it's not European, but it is snazzy looking and it's got a lot going for it. You can check my review to see what I'm talking about there. And it is one of the best, most efficient hatchbacks on the market when it comes to real world fuel efficiency, and it's fun to drive too. So it could be right for you. And what if you want a wagon? So obviously the Peugeot 308 wagon is a little bit smaller than some of the others out there, but I guess the next best alternative would be a Volkswagen Golf wagon or a Skoda Octavia wagon. I'd actually prefer the Skoda if I was looking for that sort of car. I think it's one of the nicer wagons in that segment. It is a bit bigger than the Peugeot, but hey, you're getting more practicality as a result. It's just under 4.4 meters long, so it's not intimidatingly big, but it is a little lengthier than some. And speaking of lengthy, there's also the wagon model, which is more than 4.6 meters long. Now, you do see a pretty big benefit when it comes to the back end of that car. I'll show you some footage in a sec. But first, let's take a look in the hybrids boot. Boot space in the Peugeot 308 hatch varies between whether you choose the plug-in hybrid or the non-plug-in hybrid. The plug-in one has 361 litres of cargo space, which is still pretty good. You can still fit a pram in there, although just keep in mind that that charge cable box thing does take up a bit of space. And if you choose the non-plug-in hybrid model, you get more than 400 litres of cargo space in the hatchback, which is definitely competitive, actually pretty good for the size of this car. Now, if you need even more space, there's the wagon model. The footage on screen shows how big that boot is. It's going to be better suited to families. I mean, more than 600 litres of cargo capacity is heaps for a young family. You definitely feel like you're getting what you pay for when you sit in the cabin of a Peugeot 308 because it has an amazing design to it. Well, let's talk about the design because there are some issues for some people when it comes to this steering wheel setup. It's called the iCockpit layout, and it's basically designed so you've got a really small steering wheel and you look over the top of it at the instruments. Some people hate it, like really hate it. I don't mind it. I actually think it's fine because I don't mind having the steering wheel set a little bit lower. It's not the traditional way that you would want to set your steering wheel up, but I think it's pretty cool. Tell me what you think. Have you driven one or have you sat in a Peugeot? And what do you think of it? Because, yeah, opinions are divided on this design. But you do get twin 10-inch screens. So you've got one in front of the driver for driver info. You've got a speedo, and in this plug-in hybrid version, there's also a little readout for whether it's running on battery or motor or both. And then there's a fuel use readout too. And then there's this new media screen, which has actually two screens. There's a 10-inch screen and then what Peugeot calls its eye toggles. It is a bit silly, but I actually think that it does make it a little bit easier to interact with the main screen because there is so much information running through this top screen. Below it, there's a row of buttons and a dial. The dial's for your volume control, and there's a fan button there, so you still have to press that and then go through the screen to adjust the fan speed or the temperature. I do like that there is a recirc button here. If you spend a lot of time on freeways like I do, just having a recirc button just makes it a little bit easier to live with a car. In terms of storage, there's a pair of cup holders between the front seats. There's another big storage section underneath this wireless charging bay here. I've found that my phone won't actually stay still in the charging bay. It's not a very, I guess, grippy surface for your phone to sit on, especially if you've got a cover on your phone. And then there's a covered center console bin here. There's a USB port in there. There's another USB port down here. You've got bottle holders in the doors. They're actually pretty big door pockets. And this grade, as I said, gets the big panoramic sunroof. So it does have some nice elements to it, and it does feel like you are getting what you are paying for, especially when it comes to the materials. These seats are lovely. They've got a lovely trim on them. There's this green stitching on top of the dashboard and this microfiber section that just runs the width here onto the doors. It feels premium, and I guess it should for the money that you're paying for it. Backseat time. Backseat space in the Peugeot 308 hatchback is not terrific. This seat is set for me at 182 centimeters or 6 foot tall, and my knees are brushing up against this hard plastic section on the seat back. Now that's fantastic if you've got kids, because it means they can kick till their little hearts are content, but for an adult it makes it a pretty uncomfortable seating position. Toe room's pretty limited too, and so is headroom. Getting in and out, you will find that if you're a taller occupant you might bump your head there. I've done it a couple of times, both in the back and in the front. So it's not fantastic for bigger people, let's put it that way. If you have smaller occupants that'll be using the back seats more often, then there's ISOFIX points and 3 top tether points as well. There's some directional air vents here as well, which is nice. There's a couple of USB-C ports there too, and mesh mat pockets on those hardback seats, as I mentioned. Get bottle holders in the doors. There's no cup holder though, which is strange for a car at this price point. Under the bonnet of the plug-in hybrid version of the 308, you get a 1.6 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, which has an electric motor teamed into it by way of the transmission. So there's an 8-speed auto, but it's not like the other 8-speed autos in the lineup. You've got a 12.4 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is actually pretty big for a plug-in hybrid, and that allows it up to 60 k's of EV driving range. We'll cover off charging in a sec, but you need to know that this is still a pretty powerful little unit. In fact, it's got something like 70% more power and 50% more torque than the non-plug-in hybrid versions, so that might matter to you. Now, speaking of those non-plug-in hybrids, they come with a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol. That's a throbbing little character of a thing. I love it, and it's got 96 kilowatts and 230 newton meters. And just like this one, it's front-wheel drive and has an 8-speed auto, but obviously no electric motor and stuff. So, which one's right for you? Because it's a plug-in hybrid, this car has 2 filler caps. So on this side is the petrol tank, 95 RON premium unleaded required, so keep that in mind. And on this side, you've got an AC charge port. So it's not a Type 2 combination, so it won't do fast charging. It has a maximum AC charging rate of 3.7 kilowatts, which is slower than most other electrified cars, but it's also going to be fast enough to do a charge overnight. So you should be able to get from 0 to 100% in, let's say, 6 hours or so from a regular plug on the wall. Whereas if you plug it into a faster wall box or something like that, a 7 kilowatt box like I've got at home, then you might get it done in about 3.5 hours. So yeah, it's not too bad, but it's not necessarily changing the world. I'm always going to be honest with you guys, and if I look 3 weeks older than I did than the rest of this video, that's because I've got this car back because it wasn't driving right first time around. No, first time around, it seemingly had some issues allowing me to choose EV mode and actually staying in EV mode. Now that's fixed. So apparently the problem was to do with the 12-volt battery, the regular battery under the bonnet, not the hybrid battery. And yeah, it was basically just overriding the rest of the hybrid system because the battery was low on charge. So it said, no, I need petrol engine to keep me charged or keep the alternator charged or something like that. Anyway, what it means is initially I didn't have a really good impression of this car when it came to the plug-in hybrid drive experience. But after spending a little bit more time with it, a few weeks later, when it's operating as it should, I'm pretty impressed. It doesn't have the most EV driving range that you'll get. So in my testing, I've had a 55 kilometer maximum EV drive experience, which is pretty good. And then it'll flick over to hybrid mode automatically and try and use the batteries and the electric motor or the petrol engine, depending on what is happening at that time. So it might use a combination of both, or it might just run on EV. So as I'm going up this hill now, it's kicked in the petrol engine, but if I maybe, let's say, turn down this street, it might just flick back to EV mode and just cruise along in electric. So it will dip in and out, as you would expect when it's in the hybrid mode. If you are going to run this car as a hybrid primarily, it's pretty good. If you're going to try and run it primarily as an EV, then you've got to work within those limitations. About 55 Ks seems like pretty good, realistic, real-world driving range. I'll tell you about the efficiency that I've seen in terms of the real-world fuel consumption and that sort of stuff in a sec, but I want to just cover off a few of the other elements of the drive experience. So when it is driving in hybrid mode or petrol mode or EV mode, you do notice the shifts in the transmission, and that's right, in EV mode you'll feel like the transmission's actually shifting gears, which is kind of interesting in itself. But it is very smooth for the most part, and it's not very loud either, which is a good thing. As for the steering, the driving position, as I mentioned, might not be to everyone's taste, but the steering's really nice. It's quite accurate, quite quick as well, so you just turn the wheel and it wants to dart with you, which is nice. And it's not overly darty, which is a fine balance, I find. And look, I think that the ride in this model is maybe not as good as some other small hatchbacks out there, but it's comfortable enough. I can totally see why this might appeal to you. The plug-in hybrid technology is pretty decent, and I actually think that it drives quite nicely for this type of car as well. It's just whether it'll fit your lifestyle that'll determine whether it's worth your money. The official figure for the plug-in hybrid versions of the 308 is 1.3 litres per 100 Ks. That's what you should see across a mix of driving, according to Peugeot at least. Hey, look, let me just say that that's only going to be achievable for the first 100 Ks, because once you've depleted the batteries, then you're going to be calling on the petrol engine more, and if you do more than 100 Ks, then you're definitely going to be using that petrol engine more. And that will push your fuel consumption up. I did 100 Ks. As I mentioned, I got 55 Ks of EV driving out of this battery pack, and you'll see what I achieved across my first 100 kilometers on your screen now. And then I did another 100 Ks just to see what it will do if it's just running as a hybrid car. If you do happen to go on a road trip and you just want to find out what it's going to be like when it runs out of batteries and you don't want to stop and charge, you'll see that on your screen now. I mean, you can also get a Toyota Corolla that'll do about that sort of number for a whole lot less money than this car. I know this review's been more about this plug-in hybrid version of the 308, but the petrol versions are also relatively efficient, at least on the official figures. You'll see them on your screen now. That's the official combined cycle figure for each of those different petrol versions. And I saw pretty good fuel consumption from the petrol wagon and hatchback that I drove before I drove this plug-in hybrid version. I got 6.4 litres per 100 k's in both of them. And look, I was okay with that. The Peugeot 308 range scored a 4-star ANCAP safety rating in 2022 testing. 4 isn't the maximum rating. You get 5 if you have the best safety available. So that might be something you want to consider. Now, part of the reason that it didn't score 5 stars is because of the adult occupant protection rating from ANCAP. So it might not be as safe to be in if you are in a crash, but it does have a bunch of crash avoidance technology, including autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's also lane keeping assistance, blind spot monitoring, and rear cross traffic alert. All models come with a reversing camera and front and rear parking sensors, and you can get a 180 degree or 360 degree camera depending on the grade you choose too. There's 6 airbags fitted, including dual front side and full length curtain coverage. So it's not an airbag fest, and maybe that's why it only scored 4 stars. Peugeot offers a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty these days, and that is pretty much what most other brands offer too. And if you choose the plug-in hybrid model, you get an 8-year 160,000 k warranty for the battery, and the brand says that means it basically assures that you'll have 70% usable capacity for the big battery by the end of that period. Now, there's cap price servicing available. You can get it in a prepaid plan for 3 or 5 years. It's actually pretty affordable for a European hatchback. And also, there's 5 years of roadside assist included. Nice. If you love the look of it, I can totally understand that. If you've got the money to afford it, good for you. I reckon the Peugeot 308 isn't going to be for everyone. It's still a very interesting hatchback and wagon, obviously. And I personally wouldn't go for this one. I couldn't cop the cost of the $16,000 premium for the plug-in hybrid tech. It's just not that effective or efficient to justify that kind of jump. For me, I'd be going the wagon, but let me know what you'd buy if you were choosing a Peugeot 308. I'd love to hear from you, and if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.